Welcome to C.O.I.L episode 7, also known as G. We are going to talk about why sometimes the right thing might not feel right, or in other terms, why the right thing might not even be hard. As yet again, and I'd have to keep saying inside. In some episodes, I didn't say inside directly, but it was going to be implying that as a teaching lesson. Of some other kind if it wasn't teaching directly. We always hear about the thing with doing what is hard and what is easy, or doing what is right even when it's not easy. But there are times when something that is right doesn't even feel like it is, and as well as knowing that the things that were actually easy were still the right thing to do. And why does this happen? Well, I would say that it just makes a bigger difference how you choose your own intentions, and you go with what you think is right in your own line of thinking. It is a beautiful thing to still do the right thing even if it's easy. But when it is hard and not right, why would you still do it? Again, it lines up with your intentions. It's like, would you still do the wrong thing even if it's hard to have something to prove? That's some of the other ego-driven tendencies we tend to have as human beings. We don't have to worry about those things, but sometimes it still happen to be a thing. And that's not to be hard on anyone who has done that before, whether it's right or wrong in itself. It could be controversial. But this is what makes this seem a little confusing, and understandably so. But your intentions are more powerful than you realize. When you become someone who dedicates their life to caring about what they actually want and not just worrying about making it justified, then you can still steer your life in any better direction that would be morally correct, or at least have some kind of ethics in mind and bound, and then not worry about what it means to be caring about how you do it. We have another 3 minutes to spare onto this, so I'm going to just say that for another part of the same episode lesson, when do you do what you want? So, some of these other episodes suggested before that you get to decide when you are not hard on yourself and when you truly take your own time. I will add into that mix that you'll know when something you want is not good. You'll know when something you want is necessary and the difference between the two. You kind of want to be on your own good side, though. You'll be your own best friend for much of this life. You're around yourself most of the time, or at least if not all the time. And so you're going to want to be the person who's at least your own best friend from the inside. I even made a video on this channel before about how you should at least be the first person on your side before anything else happens to be in that place. Not just other people, for that matter. You are your own best friend in the long run. You want to be someone who wants what they want because you say so. And you're not someone who cares too much about making it right, even if the right thing is easy or if the wrong thing is hard. What we're used to is the right thing being hard and the wrong thing being easy. And that feeds a stereotype better than just blowing out of proportion. But as insightful thinkers are concerned, what makes it so hard to tell that you know that something is not good to overstimulate and overcomplicate, because you know that these universal themes would still be worthwhile? And the reason that they're taught in a formulaic way is to make it so that people who know these lessons from the heart in don't need the examples to screw it over. No need specific other examples, for that matter. I'm going to just tell you that you have your own set of beliefs and principles to work with. It doesn't really matter jack squat what the universal themes tell you. As I said before, we learn alternative life lessons outside the main ones. The mainline ones are just there for guys. If you know how to use them, good for you. But you're going to want to work with the so-called alternative life lessons because you know that if you care about your own principles and beliefs and values and virtues, you're going to know for sure that you're getting what you want in spite of not doing it wrong, for whatever that means at that point. As we go further into these next 5 episodes, these 5, including this one, they're going to talk a bit more in depth about making sure that you are actually on your own side, and maybe taking action at that point too, but mostly being your own best friend and being your own good company. I'm sure that the next 4 episodes will get more in depth into both those things. But until then, guys, take care. This episode will be part of the set for G, H, I, J, K, if even L, but K at least. And that is it, guys. Take care. And I will see you in maybe not the same room, maybe, but we'll see what's up. episode H, or episode 8, I believe. We're going to talk about how taking care of yourself may seem weird at first, but it is not inherently in the wrong place. So, you notice that in the lighting in this room, I'm not really giving it too much of a chance to, have lighting, but this is a bit of a theme for the darkness kind of aspect of things. Being the light of your own tunnel, being the light at the end of your own tunnel, being the light that you shed for your own room and attic and basement, whatever. Stuff like that. Some analogies like that can work with it. But yeah, basically just darkness and light. So you are going to want to be better about how you handle self-care and not warrant it as something that does not have to be good for you just because it doesn't look right. The truth is, there's a bit of a stigma for things like self-care because on one hand, we can tell anyone we want that they're not doing it right, or they're not even supposed to do it in the first place, just do it along the way in their journey of life. But when it comes to insightful thinking, you're going to be someone who can put emphasis on how there are better ways to do these things. And even if you found the right answer, which we can get into another episode of, if not this same episode, I guess we could try. The idea of finding a good answer that you can suit with and then not kind of worry about any other answer you can find, just experiment. Because the experimentation is good for discovery. We can definitely expand that later, but the discovery of the curiosity of discovering other alternatives and not just working with the one you found that worked for now. As per the breaking the mold apart from if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But that, again, is another idea. We'll definitely expand that one for sure. We're talking about right now, though, about how it is not as silly as it sounds to take care of yourself. You want to be someone who is not taken too cornerly the idea of self-care. Even if it's not done as properly as one would suggest, but you don't want to be someone who just thinks that they don't need to take care of themselves because it's done by default. There is a conscious attempt to take care of yourself, even if it's not in a good mode. You might as well take some kind of practice to learn along the way. The problem that people come into is that time itself does not heal. You have to really take some form of action along with conscious effort to take care of these things. The time alone will not heal, even if it would. It wouldn't allow most things, to say at least, to come into place the way they do. Time itself does not heal. It's the actual implementation of what you fill out your I wouldn't have to say so in a shallow way, but honestly, like a to-do list of actually handling your own jargon and not worrying about how long or quick it would be to do those things. But yeah, the stigma does come across that self-care is pointless, or that it doesn't have an application that people understand. If you really cared about how you did this, there wouldn't be an easier way to deal with it anyways. You're not going to know right away how to do self-care. You have to be on your best terms for this. You have to be someone who cares right now where it lies, how to be careful with yourself, and how to be more self-loving of your own ideals. Why do you think people who, I won't lie, that was just a phone call, by the way. But why do you think that I would still keep talking on this recording after getting a phone call on my headset and not have to worry about it in the meantime? There was a bit of a surrender with that. There's also a bit of maybe a suspension of belief of not having to worry about what it looks like it is. Like, that's the only example I could work with in this video. That's how convenient could that be? How convenient, because I didn't have to respond. I could surrender control. I could be someone who did not have to care while still putting conscious control over my own impulses and not worry about how that enters my frame. As I enter this light in the room, you will start to see that my mood is still a little bit altered, but my attitude in response to that moment still made it true. That was probably the best possible example I could work with right now, is that you get to decide how you care about yourself, even if it doesn't seem right. You get to decide what you do for yourself, and what seems natural to you is not going to be for everyone, maybe per se, but it's just when you decide to care for yourself, maybe not too seriously, you will find that it is not as corny as it looks, but there's a reason for it to be there, even if it's not proper for what it seems to be. In this episode of C.O.I.L, or the Class of Insightful Learning, we have, I think this is actually a I, which would be episode 9. And we're going to talk about when does action matter? When does it ever have application? And if it's not too much, when does it still have taken into account other things that it has to be in combination with? The problem with the idea that it's only action that matters and that it's only avoiding stasis so that it doesn't render itself waste for things that imply that being in the same spot does not mean you will change things or even be set behind. Those are realities of life we work with all the time, understandably. But there is a common belief that the reason someone's life stays the same is because they don't directly change it. And that's not necessarily kind of the genuine way to go about it, because there's something left behind with that statement. It's like, you do have to change certain things consciously, but the only way that they change are not limited to those things. And that's because that's not the only way to do it. There's something that you can do for every situation, even if it's as insignificant as it may seem. But there are always options within those things. And so you have doors that open and close at any given moment. You won't be able to open every single one on your own or even have them open at all. But it's a bit of a half-truth to say that it's only action that changes these things, and that it's only going to be happening if you had actually done something. There is a number of things. You might think of strategy as being one of them, maybe not always, but the thought that comes into play with being with action is the idea that thoughts produce gravity. And that is something that you don't want to take too loosely. You don't want to be too banked on either, but your thoughts produce gravity. And what you do with that is that you make sure that your intentions line up with what you really think you want at that given moment. And then you take action towards those things. You could imply that maybe a strategy of where you're going and how you're going to get there has its own works, and then you take action. As far as minimal planning with more action, but when your thoughts have enough of a weight in the gravitational pull to the things you're drawing to you when you focus on them, because your intention is more valuable than you think. I'll say this for a great number of things anyways, but hear me out. It's not just action that leads to these things. If you only took action towards things that you thought you wanted, if they didn't work the way you thought they would, or they don't happen at all, that's not to say that action doesn't work. It's just the idea of the application of action being by itself and only being the mandatory thing you need, but the only thing you can do. That's very disingenuous. It's not how it works. You want some form of conscious control over your attention and your active, activity, like actually making sure that what you focus on is what you work towards, and building that towards each other, the relationship you have with what you're doing and what you're thinking or feeling. And the feeling can come into play as well. When your emotional state, the context between how you impress your weight given to anything you care about, that matters too. That has another way of pulling on to the things that draw to you. My point here is that it's not just action that does this. Like, even action compared to something like luck, like, or preparation, because preparation is always considered an action thing, and then luck is considered a fart in the wind sort of ordeal. But the thing with luck is that if you were going to only care about what happened to fall in your lap, or gave a spin bonus on whatever you still did took action towards, which, by the way, that at least implies you're still taking action and thinking it through. But luck is a significant way to see things. It's not the idea that you surrender control too much, or that you never do anything that actually matters in the long run. The idea of luck is that even with all things aside, you surrender the part of yourself that you want to have better anyways. It is an interesting interdisciplinary of wanting something better for yourself without knowing what it is. And that is very close to what would be enlightening to the point anyways. There are things that are better for you that you don't realize are good for you until you already have them. And then you don't even have to have them to understand, to believe that anyways. To have the trust rather than the faith that those things will be good for you. All in all, action is not all it takes to get these things. Logic is not all it takes to get these things. It's sometimes not even is possible for those things to work. But you have to have an interlinking relation between your actions, which you should already be doing, hopefully, with the things that do matter. It doesn't have to just be action as a mandatory way to do it, because it's not how it works. The untimeliness, again, I started the video. The untimeliness of deadlines. The dreary untimeliness of deadlines. So, we enter episode. Well, this is actually supposed to be the fourth episode of the 5 to 6. So, that probably implies that it's a J, episode 10. Okay, C.O.I.L's class of insightful learning for Stretchy Teaches. Insight. That's your class. Deadlines and how drearily untimely they are. One of the freakiest things that we deal with is timing. And when I was younger, I can imagine being very like, I definitely actually remember this. I was very hard on myself for not knowing how to deal with how everything had a time and place in certain ways, whether I liked it or not. How I dealt with that being that in my childhood, at least, time was the biggest problem. And that's as ironic as that sounds. It's like, as of all things, your childhood would have time as a problem when you have all of it, supposedly, in different ways to say at least. But the weird thing about timing is that if you cast aside some of the other ones like fear of death or freaking managing your resources with time while you have it and other ways of that being seen, deadlines by themselves are kind of BS. It's like you have to work towards a certain goal that you know you can make it work, whether you have the resources or not, but that's up to you to decide. And the thing with deadlines is that even if you could make it work easily, it is still freaking frightening. It's like the idea that it's being based on something that you could or could not be better with. There's a certain analogy I use all the time. I compare two certain video games to each other for a reason. League of Legends in the Counter-Strike series. They currently have Counter-Strike 2, so it's not just CSGO anymore. And the reason I keep mentioning those games is that they have a certain base of horror reality that is actually very much real. Because it's like the idea of winning certain battles are easy and losing certain battles are impossible. And then guaranteeing wins and unlikely underdog wins, and then so forth. This is not to say that you'll never have doors open that you could actually do something about, or closed doors that you could actually work with. But there are times in life where things are truly impossible or truly guaranteed to work in your favor, whether you like it or not, either way. In the same way this works with deadlines is that sometimes you don't want to do something anyways because it's a sunk cost fallacy maybe, or it doesn't have any weight in your life. But if it has a deadline and you don't do anything about it, would you rather regret not doing it, or would you have a way to understand that you didn't do it for a reason? You so-called quit for the right reason. And there's a lot that goes into that. But deadlines for sure are very scary. And the idea that you have a certain amount of tick-tock time to make something last or work, even if it's end of an era or the end of something else, not just workloads, it can be very frightening. And there's a lot that goes into this that doesn't have to be related to time even. That I can't remember currently. Sometimes people who have deadlines will work with having plenty of ample time to work with and don't waste the rest of it. But that's just one way to do it. It doesn't have to be the only way. I think with deadlines, we're taught that, even from my standards, it's like we're taught that it doesn't matter what we do for something to work in the given time we have, as long as it could be done until we don't know it could be done. That's the funny thing. We don't realize how possible these things are until we have confidence, because confidence can be its own fulfilling policy in itself. You believe in it and it happens anyways. You don't believe it didn't have a chance out even then. And that's a bit of a silly, it's a bit of a lighthearted way to see it, but it remains true for a lot of these things. As far as giving anything your value, that you don't know how possible it is or impossible otherwise until you try or don't. And the direct thing I can teach about deadlines is that don't let them daunt you the way that they do just because they're in real time. It's just anything that has a strictness of it being in the moment, gradually getting towards things. It doesn't matter what deadline this is, really. You decide in that moment, and you always have this choice in any split second or nanosecond, how something weighs in getting closer. It doesn't have to be a positive mindset. It would be better if it was, but you're going to want to have control over these things on your own time. The deadlines that are set for you are not the deadlines that you work with. Let me repeat that. The deadlines that are set for you are not the deadlines you work with. Your own internal clock of decision-making and reasoning are. as we enter episode K of episode 11 of the C.O.I.L's Class of Insightful Learning, or Course of Insightful Learning, the Stretchy Teaches Insight Masterclass for free online things. The end of what seems to be quarter one thumbnail of that design. We're on the 4, and I'm going to talk about while I'm running low with the score resolution. How to face facts properly and actually do it and not have the wrong context. I can fix this all later on. But it's basically the idea that what really would be common sense or logical or factual isn't what people think it is, and that the way that this gets negotiated the wrong way, or even thrown off balance the totally wrong way, and how we understood this in recent years as well as an example for that. The moment that you have to discern what a fact is or a definition, it can be frustrating, but the reason there's a lot that goes into how negotiables that aren't supposed to be there or should have been there when something wasn't in the right place to begin with. When nothing's certain, there can be a bit of a good wiggle room for that, but the balance I would look for is to have wiggle room and discernment at the same time. You want to be someone who thinks that those are different, because for wiggle room to be more free-flowing and then for the discernment to be a bit more concerned with actual facts and logic, and then actually not having to know what those even are from someone who says that they are. And it's like, this is reality when it's not. This is a fact when it's not. This is a logical way to see this when this is not even being seen any properly in mainline, and so forth. I don't have a really terribly good answer for how this works, but I am relying on this for, so there you go. But it's like, I don't know how to tell you that you're going to find the facts where they belong, because even those get skewed. You see this happen with the so-called fake news, and it happens to be a weird flop of things where you could basically agentize and weaponize anything these days. You can make do with things that don't have to have a home line. Okay, that doesn't what I said. But like, you know, that don't have to have a centralized way of being seen, and don't have to have a home base, and all that. It's awful that you can think of anything that should have been sensible, and now it can't be because people who think what sense is, or sensibleness is, or common sense or logic, can't be like that any longer, because what they thought was the reality wasn't even close to it. And this does not have to be any so-called NPC behavior. It could be anything in this life. It could be anyone who is ignorant to themselves or curiosity. When you think that curiosity overcomplicates things or makes them worse than they already are, think about what doesn't throw into the debate any attention or concern for what you want to happen in better order or logic or normality. It's like, of course, someone who's going to be curious about why something didn't work out, focusing on that when they had where it was due, would make sense out of it better than someone who was too ignorant to know what the real reality was. That's why it happens. It's not fake to be curious, even if it seems random, even if it is a waste of time at that point, not as focused as it could be. It's still better than someone who's ignorant who doesn't have that reality in place in the first place. And I would challenge you guys to try to figure out for yourselves what reality could be, even if it isn't, if it was in the right place at the given moment. Because that challenge is what gives you an ability to now know for yourself, as an insightful thinker for this quarter one parter, how to care about what is in line with logic and factual evidences, things of that nature, basically, things that come across as being normalized for the right reasons. And you're going to be someone who is both better informed and also better in line with what could be popular for the right reasons. Things that are popular aren't inherently bad. Things that are actually done properly and don't need to be fixed are not inherently bad. What is bad is people who don't try to innovate things that sometimes when curiosity and innovation seem wicked by themselves, it's usually when something is already wrong to begin with. But that's my controversial opinion for that philosophy. Be someone who does care about trying new things in spite of what could be the same thing, and then not be known for being made on anymore. When facts are ignored in a truly bad light, you'll know, because you'll just know that something's missing. But be curious and discover new ways while finding out what the true facts and logics are.
and you'll be on the way to being an insightful thinker for sure.